Hey, beautiful people. Welcome to the Resolving Conflict Mediation Summit. My name is Norine Fahie, and I am the founder and host of the Save Our Sisters group and Save Our Sisters Unplugged, the podcast that's all about resilience and strength, where my mission is to uplift and empower women of all ages. I help them to tap into their strength so they can walk in their purpose. I created these spaces to provide a non-judgmental, safe environment where women can come together to share their stories, struggles, and achievements. I believe in the invincible spirit that resides within every woman. The point of this is to let women know that they're not alone in their life struggles and that we're all in this together. In addition to that, I love having those educational discussions that can help women in their everyday lives. And this week is Mediation Week, so it's only fitting to have that discussion. Mediation is a method of alternative dispute resolution that involves working with a trained mediator who helps to facilitate communication between parties involved in a legal dispute. We have two amazing and very well decorated experts in this field here today who will give us insight into the world of mediation. Our first guest earned her Juris Doctorate from Drake Law with certificates in constitutional law and civil rights law. She then founded her own firm, Justice Law PLLC, where she did criminal defense, business, and family law. She also developed the mediation and conflict resolution firm, Mediation Settlement Services, as well as her umbrella company, Elite Legal Services, LLC. She is highly sought after attorney and advocate for Black people and is known for her firm stance against injustice. She's traveled throughout the country and international on behalf of victims of police brutality and injustice and has been on the ground in countless demonstrations, protests, and speaking engagements. She's helped organize in cities around the country on behalf of Justice or Else, Black Lawyers for Justice, Iowa Citizens for Justice, and the NAACP voter registration campaigns. She has been interviewed by CNN, BBC, Fox News, NPR, The Carl Nelson Show, Al Jazeera, and countless other radio and television outlets. Please help me welcome Dr. Hassane Muhammad.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Honored to be here. Don't know who you're talking about, but I'm honored to be here.
That is all you, sis. That is all you. Our second guest is a partner at George & George ADR Group. He serves as a full-time Florida Supreme Court certified circuit and county mediator and qualified arbitrator. He is a trained and certified hostage crisis negotiator and also has certifications as a paralegal, labor and employer mediator, workers' compensation professional, and cannabis mediator, as well as faculty member trainer of the Settlement House ADR Institute located in Nigeria. He is a keynote speaker and has been featured on numerous podcasts and magazines, including Attorney at Law. And finally, in his community, he is on the boards of the Jacksonville, Puerto Rican Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Love and Legacy, which brings awareness to human trafficking and offers resources to survivors. Welcome, Mr. Joseph Matrix George, to the Queen's Domain.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you both. Man, you guys make me feel like I am just not doing enough out here in these streets.
You're just getting started.
You're just getting started? Oh, I'm just
getting started.
I'm just getting started. Clearly, I have a big hill to climb. Well, before we jump into the meat and potatoes of this discussion, tell us why you got into mediation. Why is this a passion for you?
Well, I guess I'll go first. I think that's an excellent question because whenever you have a passion for something, that means that you're more than likely it's something you were already doing before you realized you could turn it into a profession or a meaningful way to change society. And for me, I was always, first of all, always advocating for the underdog. Even when we were in the playground and someone was getting picked on, I was like, wait, stop. What's going on? Like, no, don't pick on, So from a child, I had a very keen sense of justice and right and wrong, and also wanting to make things right. How I got into mediation as I was going through my process to become an attorney, along the way, I picked up, a paralegal certificate. I picked up a notary. I'm sure George is going to understand this. I picked up a few licenses here and there, but I picked up mediation actually prior to going to law school. And I took a course and I got a certification. And then when I got into the practice of law, especially and particularly in family law, and even in the civil rights cases, the few that I did get a chance to work on, mediation was critical in like every avenue of the law. No matter what type of case it was, there was always an opportunity or a judge saying, mediate, right? George, I'm sure you can back me up on this.
Yes, I can.
A lot of times mediation is court ordered. A lot of times mediation is really where a lot of lawsuits and things are settled. So it actually started, I was already in law school, and my neighbor, and I know she's already given me permission to share this, but I'll make it quick. My neighbor was going through a really rough patch with her husband, and she had been so critical to me while I was going to law school because I had 4 children at the time and I was married at the time. And her marriage was on the rocks, and she knew instinctively that I could help her, and I had never actually used my mediation. And so she asked me to come over and sit down with her and her husband, and some things had occurred that were actually breaking up their marriage. And by God's grace and the tools that I learned as a mediator, I was able to help them save their marriage, and they're still married to this day.
Oh, wow.
And it hit me how impactful that was to that family, to have someone come in and actually help them resolve their differences. And so their little girls got to grow up with their mom and dad still together. And it was tough, but it was so rewarding to me, Norine, that, and I also realized, now juxtapose that with being in court and having all of these rules and arguing and fighting, and it's a lot of lies, a lot of treachery. So actually my heart and my spirit is more of a peacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that, and so I've started to kind of transition into mediation, which led me into family law. So my main passion is, I offer a few things. I offer mainly divorce mediations, but I also do a reconciliation mediation where if there's a chance that we can help people resolve the differences in their marriage, then I offer them a reconciliation mediation. And that's something that, I'm really passionate about, and I want to push a little bit more, because you don't want to go to that option unless you absolutely have exhausted all other potential outcomes, because divorce is very hard on everyone, and particularly children, right? But some of us have had to go through it anyway. So that's my passion, my little intro into why I am passionate about mediation, and I will turn it over at this time.
Joseph, how about you?
Well, after hearing that, I guess I could say I could jog back to my childhood at the time when I didn't know what mediation was. Growing up in a 10, having a big family of 10, and I'm the middle child. So, the in-house fighting between the siblings and stuff like that, I always seem to be the one that always talk to both sides and never take sides, just see things as it is. So fast forwarding from that, and then COVID, I got injured during COVID time, and I was home, and a friend was telling me about mediation and things like that. An attorney friend of mine, he was talking about him wanting to do it, and he told me I would be great at it, being that I already was doing negotiation for businesses already. So I figured, well, I'm in bed, on bed rest, and can't leave the house since COVID anyway. So when the courts actually open up in Florida to do all the training online, well, I took advantage of it. And ever since then, I've just been, making it happen. And my biggest thing is doing a lot of the landlord and tenant disputes. But my greatest passion is assisting people who've been wrongfully terminated. So being a trained EEO investigator as well as a employment mediator, I like to help people who've been wrongfully terminated from their job. So me and my attorneys, we assist those people with those type of transition from being taken advantage of to, finding out how to resolve those disputes. So ever since then, I've just been, in magazines, been on billboards, and just enjoying the fruits of my labor. But at the same time, I actually help others. So a lot of people call me up to do observations. So I assist people who want to do their observations to get their certification, whether it's county or the circuit court. I assist them with their observations, kind of giving back. Yeah.
That's good. I like that.
That's amazing.
The fact that you use your childhood as an example.
Yeah. Yeah. Big families, there's always in-house fighting. So, you always have one person who always there to try to resolve it, but never take sides. And it may not be, a little child. It might be Big Mama. Big Mama.
It could be anybody. It could be anybody. Well, as African Americans, was it hard for you guys to break into the industry?
Yes, Hassane, I'll let you go first.
No, I think it sounds like both of us maybe had either a legal background or attorney friends. So I believe that makes it a little bit easier to, get clients and get referrals and things like that. So I can honestly say it's not a hard field to get into, but I do think some of the best mediators do have a knowledge of the law, and they also have a natural way of being very comfortable communicating with people.
But for me, it was different. So when I first got my certification, I thought when you get your certification, you start getting clients, the court's gonna start sending you, cases. And that is so far from the truth. So for me, I actually didn't know. I was looking around and calling up, different mediators. Nobody know how to market themselves. Most of them was attorneys referring other attorneys to mediate cases. So the non-attorney mediators always seem to be left trying to figure things out. So what I did is I went in my bat cave, and being that I already had my MBA in business and marketing, I flexed my muscle on that and used that training to figure out ways. So I came up with explainer videos to explain what the process of mediation, and I just started educating the public. So I did postings on LinkedIn, I did Facebook, I did Instagram, and that's how I get my clients. So most of my clients doesn't come from referrals from attorneys or anything. Most of my clients come because I educate the public on what mediation is. So people see me out there. So you have to put yourself out there. A closed mouth don't ever get fed. People always say that.
Absolutely.
I agree.
I live by that.
I will be stealing some of his methods, by the way.
Yeah.
I did post that video to the group just to give people a little snippet of what mediation is. So I did post that in the Save Our Sisters group. Dr. Hassane, what types of disputes are best suited or not appropriate for mediation?
It's more so, to me, the people. I feel that almost every dispute can be mediated and a mediation should be attempted. However, there are people that are not set up very well for mediation. Now, someone with George's skill, that he could probably maneuver about anyone. But what I've found is that you have to be willing to mediate in good faith. You have to be willing to compromise. And so prior to mediation, I do try to send out information like it may hurt both of you a little bit. There's going to be some pain. If there's a little pain on both sides, that means that we're actually negotiating and we're actually compromising. But there are certain people who are not as open to mediation, and they're a little bit more difficult. So I would say it's the mindset of certain people that make mediation not so much an option. You almost have to lawyer up with them because they're just unreasonable.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I can definitely relate to that. I think in my own divorce, I think exactly the way we handled it was
Mhm.
what needed to happen. I don't think mediation was an option for us at all.
Yes.
So what roles does cultural sensitivity play in mediation, and particularly when dealing with conflicts involving individuals from diverse backgrounds? Like, how can mediators address those challenges?
I'll let Joseph go first.
So in mediation, when they step in the room, as long as they're there in good faith, you can overcome any challenge. It doesn't matter what background or what the dispute's about. As long as both parties are there in good faith and they both want to solve the issue, then race, nothing takes part because you're there about the issue. And as long as you're a skilled mediator trained with handling that particular issue, you come in with the mindset of how to diffuse it before you even start. So you listen, and that how you address them in your opening statement sets the tone for your mediation. That opening statement sets the tone on how the mediation is gonna be. Even though both parties resolve the dispute on their own and then we move the information back and forth, but we set the tone as the mediator on how that mediation is gonna go. So it's either you're gonna keep them in the same room together or you're gonna separate them, and you have to make that judgment call on. Sometimes you have to read that body language. And a lot of mediators, if they don't read that body language, things could go left real quick. So you could see when people start to tense, when they start tapping the pencil or they start fiddling with paper, you know things is getting a little bit tense, and that's when you say, you know what, I think we're gonna go to caucus. And then you put them in separate rooms and you talk to them separately. And then it depends on the situation. If you feel it's sensitive, just go ahead and separate them straight from the beginning. After you done do your opening statement, just go ahead and separate them, because some sensitive issues, you don't want them in the same room. Even though you feel you could control it, it's better to just go ahead and put it in a separate room and work it from there.
Okay. What
Great
do you think,
answer.
Dr. Hassane? Right on the
I
money?
I do take a person's cultural into consideration, just more of a awareness, but like he said, principles of fairness, equality, and resolution don't have a color or a race or a sex or anything like that. So those principles, however, if you knowing a little bit about your client's background or upbringing can be helpful as a tool to get to those same principles that are universal, right? So, you guys may have a unique experience with your background and a way that your family handles things. And so sometimes being conscious of that and bringing awareness to that, even in the mediation, like, yes, this is how things used to be done, or this is, I understand this might be a part of your culture, but have you thought about this? Or have you tried this? And so sometimes, I've been the rules a little bit, George. Sometimes if I feel like they're not getting into you, I sometimes may make a suggestion. I don't know if you ever do that or not, but yes, mediation is led by the clients. It is their decision making, but sometimes when they're out of options as mediators, we pull from our experiences and our our knowledge, and sometimes we say, well, would you consider this option and this option? What do you guys think about this? Sometimes our clients they do need a little bit of guidance, but we can't make decisions for them. They stay empowered throughout the entire process.
That's good. And I think that actually makes them a little more comfortable. And just like Joseph said, when you set that original opening statement, it sets the tone for how this thing is going to go. So the clients may even come in a little apprehensive, because I think anything legal, it gives people anxiety, right?
Yes.
And so once you
Yes.
guys come in and you set the tone and they're like, okay, this is not as bad as I thought. because that's what I thought about, Zoom court. I was
Yeah.
like so intimidated until the judge's face popped up, and and she was very nice and introduced herself, and I was like, okay, this is not going to be so bad. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, this is actually a little bit better that it's on Zoom, because I'm not in this big, intimidating public courtroom,
Mhm.
So the balance between going into a courtroom opposed to mediation, how do people like that better? Like, is that something that people really prefer?
You want me to go?
Yes.
So there's a statistics out there that says that, I think it's from the AAA, that rates it, and even the courts now are starting to do their numbers on mediation. About now, I think it's about 72% of the cases that goes to mediation is resolved versus going to court. And the balance of that is, when I can use my clients. So I have celebrity clients. I have, rap artists. I have, movie stars. And the reason for them, why you don't see a lot of them into the media anymore, of so-and-so just got a divorce, and, he took the child, and the wife took the car and the house, and he was left with nothing. The reason you don't see those like back in the days in the news is because a lot of them find out that mediation is the better option, because a lot of people don't know, when you go to the courthouse, everything is public knowledge. When you go to mediation, everything is confidential, and both parties get something out of the deal. Now, if you go to court, the thing is, with court, there's going to be a winner and a loser, or you're just both going to be losers, because there's a judge deciding on your case, or you have a jury of your peers that's deciding your fate. So why not take destiny into your own hands and go into mediation and make notes before you get done what you want to get out of mediation? So when you get into the mediation, you already know what you want. Because, I mean, if you're in a dispute with let's say Ms. Hassane said, she does a lot of family divorces. Unlike her, I do the family divorces too, except I work with attorneys and I do the separation of assets part. So I deal with the part where they're fighting over the couch or the house or the cat, the dog, the children. I I work on that part. So when you're dealing with those type of dynamics, especially you're dealing with two professional business owners who are very strong-minded, it could make things frustrating for media, and it could just make everything complex. But the process is a whole lot quicker because you're on the mediator's calendar. So you guys get a chance to set the date at the appropriate time for both parties, versus the court give you a date. And if one party don't show up, chances are the judge could either dismiss the case or a judgment could be filed against the other person. So mediation is quicker, faster, confidential, and less expensive. Because you don't need because you don't need an attorney. People think that all the time, if I go to mediation, I must have an attorney, and that's not true. Both parties can be proceeds, and a proceed is someone who does not have legal counsel.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Very well said.
Thank you.
Yes, I think I would the only thing I could add to that wonderful, literally that could have been an infomercial, like the best explanation I have heard of mediation. I'm sold. I'm like, let me get into mediation.
Yeah.
Sign me up. But I also want to talk about something that we experience a lot here as Black people in North America with the judicial system. We don't always get justice. We don't always get heard. And a lot of times, mediation is a more affordable way of us to settle our differences and more just. So when I say that to say, even, I get a lot of men who are clients who have just, they've been shafted, right? They go into court, they just get hit with everything, and sometimes there's, when you have a stranger making those decisions for you, you're disempowered. And sometimes, depending on their day, they may not care. They may not take the time to look at all of your documents and really assess your situation. Sometimes it's rubber stamp, next case, you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
very
So,
impersonal.
so you can set your own justice, but like I tell my clients, I want it to be ethical and fair, and that's going to be different for every family, every situation, every business. So I just want to say that in addition to it being economical, it being on your schedule, it being and by the way, George, you're doing all the hard work for the attorneys. Once you figure out all the assets, I mean, if you're doing a divorce, that's the main, that's all, that's really all it is all the assets. So, you know, make sure they're cutting you a very big check for that, because you're making their job so easy. Because
Yeah.
Trust
really,
me, I do.
yeah, because I mean, once we've done that, there's nothing left to do except draw up a consented decree, right? So the mediator is doing the heavy lifting up front. You're doing it in private. You're getting on their schedule. We're a lot easier to get a hold of than your attorney. We're a lot cheaper. Even if we charge a lot, we're still a lot cheaper. And also, again, you're still empowered throughout the process, right? So then we are submitting something to the court. This is what we agreed on. And most of the time, the judge is just going to sign off on it, right? So you retain your power and as much privacy and as much dignity as you can when going through a divorce or whatever you're going through. Any type of conflict is already emotionally draining. So a trial or going to courthouses, dealing with lawyers and bailiffs and clerks and everybody that's like around, it is very intimidating. So I feel like this is our way. I feel like a long time ago, when we had tribes and groups and we had differences, we would come together and we would settle them, right? And you'd have the wise elders, which would be me and George at this point. You'd have the wise elders who would hear both sides equally and like help decide a fair outcome. And so I feel like the shift is back toward, it's more natural. It's a more natural, more humane system. And so that's what I'm drawn to. And that's what I try to give my clients, is just give them, you know, and I tell them, I know you're upset, but I'm going to require that you be a human and be fair. You know, I know
Yeah.
you're just gonna, you know, you have to come. So that opening statement is everything. I tell them, we're not here because it's a judgment-free, safe space, right? Because we've heard everything, haven't we not, George? We've heard everything. So there's nothing you can tell me as a mediator that's going to make me judge one person or the other, because we've heard it all, right? So it's a waste of time to deal with what happened in the past that led you. Let's talk about how we can move forward. So it's happened. We're here now. How can we make this the best situation for your family going forward in the future? Because guess what? Even though you get a divorce, if you have children, you're always going to be in each other's lives.
Exactly. And I think a lot of
I know
people lose sight of that part. I
they
think they
do.
do, because the kid, you know, it is super important for both
Mhm.
parties to actually come together, especially when there are children involved. Because if you care about them enough to come to the table, so to speak, you come into the table, you need to
Mhm.
just be able to plead your case, plead your side, be fair, and be respectful. So have you guys
Mhm.
ever had, you know, when a mediation just went left, like you had to like really like put your muscle on and be like, hey, this is my mediation, you're not in control. Have you ever had to do that?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
You want to go first or you want me to go first? You want to go first, Miss Hassane, or you want me to go first?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mine's seemed to stem with I had a particular case. It seems to happen mostly with two departments of mine's own. When you have two attorneys in the room for both sides, and sometimes attorneys sometimes they don't want mediation. I hate to put this out there, but most attorneys really don't like mediation. They like trial. They make money from the trials. But you know, like here in Florida, the Florida bar has changed some rules around to govern a lot of the stuff like that, to you know, hold a lot of these attorneys who is not in their client's best interest. because again, you're there for your client's best interest. Trial, if trial is not suited for that particular client, you have to let the client know that mediation might be an option to go first. So I've had to go where our attorney, he's like, no, we're gonna go. I don't want here to settle. I want to go to trial, this and that. And I pulled him aside away from his client, and I had a conversation with him, and I explained to him how this is gonna go, and I tell him how I run my mediation, and I let him know my rules. And then we went back in the room and we sit back down, and mediation went smoothly, and we actually settled on that case. That case was actually done. Deed consent went to the judge. And
That's
then
great.
another instant is the biggest cases that have where you have to be firm is in landlord and tenant disputes. And I do a lot of landlord and tenant disputes, and they go left every time. I've only had maybe I've done over 200 and something landlord and tenant mediations. And let me tell you something, I've only had one landlord and tenant mediation that was settled in an hour. And that was because it was a good tenant and the landlord liked her, and she was behind. She got sick, but she came back and she told him, listen, I got the money, I paid it to the court registry. And the landlord said, I turned to the landlord, say, hey, are you willing to accept her back in the place? And he said, plain out, she was a great tenant. We would like to have her there. She's never been no problem. She's always paid on time. This is the first incident. And that was closed up like boom, boom. Now, when you have, I've had one, and I've told this to several people. I had one where this lady had a pig in an apartment complex, and she had chickens and something else she had inside there, and she had the bathtub fill up with mud. It was a 2-bedroom, and it stunk. Everybody called code enforcement, but code enforcement gave enough citations. And she just was not getting it. She's like, well, the mayor said that the custodian from COVID. And I said, ma'am, that's done been gone. You got to pay your rent. That's done been gone.
Yeah.
But she was not getting it, and she was going at it with the landlord, and she was telling him, you're not going to put me out. And if the sheriff come, I'm going to lock the door. Nobody. And she's just going left. And long story short, I pull her aside, and I turn to her and I say, well, this particular person doesn't want to take you to court. They want you out. This landlord wants you out. And she's like, well, I'm not leaving. I ain't going nowhere. This is my home. That pig is emotional support animal. And I'm saying, ma'am, I'm looking at the pictures, and this pig is a big old pig. This is not no little oink oink. This is a big old boy. So, but
it's not Wilbur.
No, it was definitely not Wilbur. And Charlotte was nowhere around. So, so I turned to her and I said, ma'am, I'm gonna just do these numbers so you could understand what's going on. I say right now, to do the paint because of the smell and from the chicken and the pig, the flooring alone is about $3,000 to replace the flooring. They have to wash it, they have to seal it, etc. Install new flooring. I said to do the paint job. The paint job is another up to $3,000 and change. So you're looking about $6,000 already. I say then on top of that, the plumbers have to do another $4,000 because the mud went down into the drain pipes. So they have to flush all that out because some of it dried up in there. And because of the pig done clawed up the tub, now the tub is no good, so the tub has to be replaced. So, and I say now if he goes to court, he wants attorney fees, and because you guys been back and forth before, he's already about, I think he said he was already $7,000 in attorney fees, and he's gonna put that on you if they go to court. So you're looking about a good, I think around $15,000 to $20,000. If I really calculate it right, in fees, if you go to court and lose, I'll move out.
I'm sure. Wow, that is
sometimes
crazy.
Sometimes they don't listen till you put numbers together.
Yeah, because she would have to do all that. And why would your first option be to put the pig in the tub? Like, who does that? And this is
Well,
my home. It's technically not your home.
and
Where is
that's the
she
biggest,
taking a bath? That's my question. Where
yeah,
is
this
she?
That's the question. That's the
well, it was
million
a
dollar question of
it's
the
a two
day.
bedroom. It was a 2 bedroom, and it had another bathroom. So the pig
Chill.
pretty much
Who
had
lives
his
with a
own
pig
view.
and a chicken in an apartment?
Yeah,
No.
and the residents
No,
complaining because the rooster is crowing in the morning, waking people up. So yeah.
that is
Oh,
wild.
So so
so
so so in landlord and tenant disputes, that's one of the biggest areas of mediation where things always seem to be. It's tricky. It goes right, it goes left, because sometimes you have not just a landlord and tenant. You have a mother could be putting her daughter out, or the daughter could be putting the mama out. So it's tensions are always high because somebody's moving out of their home and they have to go pay to find a new place to stay. So it gets extremely sensitive in the landlord and tenant dispute department.
That's
right,
crazy.
someone's home. Yeah. Wow. I have so many thoughts and comments on your pig case. It's just
Well, when I heard that and I saw that, and they've shared this, when you share your screen and they're showing you the pictures, as a media, you want to laugh, but you gotta hold it in, because in your mind you're like,
yes,
what? you
yes.
you have
Like,
that like, what is this moment? Like, what am I being punked? Where's Ashton? Is he behind me somewhere? Who's
yes.
That is so wild.
That is wild. I don't have any stories with pigs and chickens involved. I really don't. I don't. And I'm glad because, Norine, there's mental health issues in this country. And I unfortunately have ran into that with my clients, but never to that extreme. But a lot of times in divorce, it's very nasty, right? And sometimes I have noticed that, and in particular, women, don't get mad at me, women. I want you guys to listen, okay? Don't get mad, but I'm going to speak truthfully, okay? What I have noticed in a lot of my divorce mediations is where the woman wants to control how the father handles the children. And it's almost extreme, like, well, I want him to put them in bed at 8 o'clock. I want him to fix them. It's like not being able to let go of control, right? And in a divorce, unfortunately, he has his household, you have your household, you share the children. So a man does not parent like a woman. I know I might get people that say we're all the same. We're not the same, okay? Because I have noticed in all my mediations that the woman typically feels like the man is he should parent how she parents. And the man has a totally different way, which is just fine. So what I find that's most challenging is, one, I have a lot of clients who are trying to manage. That never works. I think you guys froze. I don't know if I froze.
You froze.
I froze. Okay. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I have, like, they say it's fast and premium, but apparently not. So I guess I don't know what part you heard, but I was basically saying, am I frozen again?
no.
Okay. I was basically saying that the difficult ones are when people are unreasonable. They may be dealing with a mental health issue. When I say unreasonable, I mean where sometimes, and I don't know if you've noticed this, George, but sometimes people, even when they win, they want to keep fighting. Have you noticed that? It's
Mhm.
because it's still a connection. Noreen, if I can still fight with you, if I don't agree, if I agree, it's over. Do you understand?
Yeah.
It's over.
Or
And so,
principle.
huh?
I said, or some people who say, well, it's about the principle. Even when they're wrong, it's about principle.
Right. But deep down, they don't want to stop fighting because once the fight is over, even though I'm getting what I want, the connection is gone now. I actually have to move on. And you
Yeah.
become so invested in the fight. It's a way to stay tied. Some of these people, remember, people are getting divorced. Not both parties usually don't want a divorce. There's usually one party that still wants to be tied to that person. So one of my challenges as a mediator is getting them to accept that this is happening, right? And let go. Because I'm like, why are you arguing? You asked for it, she gave it to you. They'll go back and in something we've already agreed to, they'll go back and try to re-argue that. Have you,
Yeah.
so it's dealing with the person's emotional, and I've realized over the years, like they are just not ready because once we've agreed, okay, let's sign the paperwork, you're done in that way, and they don't want to let go of their marriage. So that's one of the challenging, I would just say, as overall, those are the most challenging when there's one party who does not want to get a divorce, especially with my divorce clients. They will fight tooth and nail over a pickup time or an exchange location for 2 hours because they just need to stay connected to that person.
That is so bizarre, but I get it, and like you said, there's a lot of mental health issues involved sometimes, and
Mhm.
acceptance, letting go, moving forward, being alone. There's a lot of things that people are really dealing with when they come into a mediation/divorce space, or, even with
Yeah.
separation of property. The lady with the pig, she was like, no, the chickens and the pigs are happy. I'm not going anywhere. But then,
Yeah.
when she realized how much it was going to cost her, it came down to it's either me or the animals. She was like, she was like, okay, I'm out of here. It's not
Out of
worth it.
here.
And that's her. And then we have reality. Now we have acceptance, you know?
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
just so bizarre how you guys have to really deal with that. So step me
Mhm.
through the minute the client comes in, you give your speech. Like, what are your steps? Like, what is it that a mediator actually does at that point? If I'm clear with my question.
I'll answer first because I feel like I feel like George is more of a master in all those areas. So what I'm gonna say, he's gonna be able to add on to. So I'll just give the brief overlay. So in general, when I send out a pre-mediation question, so I'll do a free consultation with the clients, kind of see, if we're a good fit for what they're looking for, what they're trying to do. So I do offer that for free. And then once they say, hey, we would like to use you as our mediator and everything, I send them out a pre-mediation questionnaire. This gets them to thinking about, okay, what would I like to see happen? What are the issues that I want to get resolved? What do I think the barriers are to resolution? And what would I like to see as an outcome? So this is sent to my clients prior to mediation. And then they send it back to me so that I can make sure, one, that I address everything that needs to be addressed, because I want them to get up from the table and we're done. I don't want anything else coming back. So whatever it is, I want to know about it. And it also gives me a chance to kind of see how far apart they are on certain things and how close, so I'll know, okay, we're going to spend a lot of time on the house because they're sitting me up, and one is saying, I want him to pay all the mortgage for the next 5 years. And the other one, he's saying, I want to sell it immediately and split the equity. Okay. They're far, far apart. Right. But they might both turn in something on custody, and they're saying joint custody, and maybe the schedule is just a little tweaking. Right. So that my process is, a lot of groundwork before the mediation so that I can kind of focus and guide the mediation to, because every family's issues may be different, right? Even though they're going through a divorce, they may have something, you wouldn't believe it, but I've had to do parenting plans for pets because they're having trouble deciding who gets the dog. Like literally, George is like, people look at their pets like children and they fight over who will get the dog, and actually have custody. So I've had to make visitation schedules. Like, so, but for another family, that's not even an issue, right? So those things are known prior to mediation. So in the mediation, like he said, we do an opening statement. I also allow my clients to do an opening statement if they want to. They don't have to. And it kind of like sets the tone. Like they'll usually say something like, well, I do want to get it resolved in a fair way, and I just want this to be over, and da da da. You know, they'll say something, and then I go into, you know, after everybody's made their opening statements, I go right into, so there's like sections and things that need to be decided in a divorce. So I'm going to go over assets, liabilities, how we're going to do our taxes, the custody. So I have a thing that I follow. I have my own forms and worksheets that I'm working on as I'm working them through, because I want to make sure that I cover every single thing that needs to be covered statutorily for them to get a divorce or for them to liquidate their business. Because I do that, you know, when people are like breaking up businesses, things like that, I do those mediations as well. So we cover everything, and, you know, I'm drafting, you know, the mediated settlement agreement and things like that as it's going. So that's in an overview. Once we get all of that done, now I will take breaks. I do my mediations all virtual. All my mediations are virtual. I don't do any in-person mediations. So I use Zoom and Google Meets and things like that. And basically, and I'm probably skipped over some steps, but, you know, there's the back and forth. However, I will, you know, you can separate into rooms, even on Zoom, you know, you can separate people out and stuff like that. But yeah, you have your breakout rooms. But for the most part, for me, now every mediator is different, but I try to keep them together because it's faster, right? And so it's faster, and instead of going, okay, put you in a room, I'm going to go ask you a question, and I'm going to come back, then I'm going to ask them a question, then I'm going to get this response, then I'm going to come back. I kind of just okay, we're here, we're going to knock this out. It doesn't always work. Sometimes we do have to separate, and sometimes I have to go into like other forms of mediation. But for the most part, my mediations are actually like the three of us are on the phone. We're all on the phone. We're all working it out together. So that's my, in a nutshell, then conclusion, then mediated settlement agreement, and then, you know, paperwork as necessary. Okay, so that's my process.
But it's very thorough, and I think you probably need to be thorough and organized in order for it to really go smoothly, especially on your end where you're in charge of what's going down.
Yes. So for me, I'll use a breach of contract. So when there's a breach of contract dispute, I usually have my clients mail it out to me. You know, both parties mail everything out to me, so I could review the documents on both sides. And then I do a final review the day before our mediation. That way I'm fresh, and we go inside and I sit both parties down. I go through with my opening statement. I ask the person who brought the matter to our attention first to their opening statement. Then I'll have the defendant go with their opening statement. And I do this in a joint session. So both parties could hear what each other is thinking, so they could start formulating in their mind how each other could resolve this dispute. And then I tell them, I'll ask them, as both parties here in good faith to resolve this dispute. But after each person does their opening statement, I ask them, so what do you want to get out of this mediation today? So the other side could know what's going on. And then, you know, I ask the other person the same thing. And then that's when I go into the full joint session. I don't separate them right there and then. I talk to them, and I let the other person know we both are here, and I don't want nobody to interrupt the other person when they're speaking, no matter how bad it may itch you to want to say something, because something might be so sensitive that you want to say, oh no, she's lying. Don't. We ain't gonna do that. We're gonna be professional, and this person has the opportunity, they have the floor. You're gonna have your opportunity to have your say. And then we're gonna go back and forth on how to resolve it. And once they both figure out what they want, I'm jotting my notes down. So we go in a breakout session, I could know what the meat and potatoes is, and I focus on that. Everything else is just noise. I don't need the extra stuff from the neighbor, was on the roof painting the house or pressure washing, and he saw him running over the cat or the bushes. or whatever. I don't care
Yeah.
about all that. What do you want to get about the mediation today?
I
That's
love it.
right.
Sometimes I explain, and then you have every mediator has had a case where I want to go see the judge. I say, that's good and well, but going to see the judge ain't as glorified as you think it is. I understand you probably saw Law and Order like 100 times, all the episodes, all the seasons. But trust me, it's not like you think it's gonna be. When you go inside, you're gonna have this big guy, and the judge's gonna stand there and allow you to repeat every story and allow you to make
No.
phone calls to Terry on his job to listen to his side of what he thought. No, it's a boom, 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 boom. Do you do you sign this contract? Yes, sir. Were you under duress when you signed this contract? No, I was not. Did somebody threaten you? No. Was you intoxicated? No. Was you heavily medicated? No, Your Honor. So you was in your right mind when you signed this contract? Yes, sir. And a lot of times, I hear this every time. Did you read the contract? Well, Your Honor, what had happened was, did you read the contract?
That's where they messed up.
Well, I read the first part, my name and his name, and it was just so long of a contract, I didn't want to read everything. Well, you signed it, didn't you? Yes, Your Honor. That's your signature? Yes, Your Honor. Then you're held accountable for what you signed.
Period.
If
That
you
is
ain't
so
read it,
bizarre.
yeah, if you did not read it, that's not that person's fault because you didn't read the contract. That's not their
It's
fault.
not your fault.
Yeah.
You didn't
That's a
do
you
your due
problem.
diligence. That's a you
Yeah.
problem. And
That
that's
is
what
so crazy.
George is saying is true, Norine. You can't, there's rules of evidence. There's procedure in court. You can't just, like you said, call Uncle Terry while you're, with mediators, you have a lot more, in mediation, you have a lot more leeway.
Flexible.
You're not, to like say, get your story out to be heard. In court, you're just, you're subject to the rules. And so a lot of people don't understand that, like, yeah, you're not going to be able to go and tell the judge your whole life story. You're just not. And one of my rules in mediation, I said, you guys can't interrupt each other, but I will interrupt you if you get off subject. Like I have to, because there are always people that want to take you on the roller coaster ride.
Right.
But anyway, so there are people that want to take you on a roller coaster ride. And so we have to step in, Norine, and say, hey, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm so sorry, but that's not relevant. House cheese didn't wash the dishes and she was a dirty mom, whatever you're talking about right now, has nothing to do with this custody schedule that we're trying to work out. So I'm going to stop you. Because one, we have to de-escalate things. And so sometimes you do have to cut people off. But I let them know, like he said up front, I tell them, like, I will interrupt you, just so you know, when it starts to go left and things like that. But he makes a really good point, and it's really one of my selling points, Norine. When people are calling me and they're like, lawyers, whenever they're in my mediations, it always goes left. Because as a lawyer and as friends of lawyers, and I tell my clients, the retainer, we like to run that retainer out. We have to justify getting all that money. So if I charge you a $7,500 retainer for a divorce, I have to bill those hours out. So why in the world would I want to sit down with Joseph 2 weeks into the divorce and have him work out everything and it's settled? I may have to give you some money back. No, absolutely not. I'm going to go to George's mediation and I'm going to object and act a fool and fight to the death. Why? Because I can drag this on. And I'm not saying all lawyers do this, okay? But I'm saying to those that are listening, it's a fact. We get paid by the hour. So the more hours we put in on your case, the more money we make. So the faster you agree is not always in my best.
That is the truth. That is the truth for sure.
And comply with George and his reasonable, rational mediation. No. And so, but then what happens? The lawyers fight, they act crazy. What does the judge do, Joseph, once the lawyers have drained out your retainers? What does the judge do when they still haven't come to an agreement?
The judge sanctions them sometimes.
And he orders mediation anyway.
Yep.
So, so Norine, I come to you before you guys do all this. Let me mediate it. Oh, I don't want to cooperate. I'm going to go get lawyers. Okay, you lawyer up, you fight for 6 months, and then guess what? The judge still orders mediation.
Yep.
Exactly.
So you're so you could have just mediated in the first place.
Yep.
You could have just mediated in the first place.
So do you think lawyers look down on mediators, or do they see you guys as equals?
If you're not an attorney, so I've fought this back and forth, and I still fight this. I've even challenged 30-year-old veteran attorneys on this. I don't like to use the term, but I'm going to use it just for clarification for this podcast. So there's attorney mediators and there's non-attorney mediators that exist. In mediation, there's no such thing as an attorney mediator. You're a mediator, just as a paralegal is a paralegal and a doctor is a doctor. Let's clear that up. So for this podcast, because of your question, attorneys look down on mediators who is not an attorney. So we call them non-attorneys, just for this podcast sake. The non-attorney mediator is looked down upon as if he's not skilled enough, because the attorneys feel like the ones who feel that they went to law school and all this stuff, that they know how to mediate better than a non-attorney mediator. And that is so far from the truth. And
not true.
I have watched and talked with some of the mediators out there that's not attorneys. And here's the problem with why non-attorney mediators is so much more skilled than attorney mediators. Some attorneys cannot take off that lawyer hat, and especially if you're dealing with a trial lawyer who is a mediator,
a litigator. Yes,
it's in his head to fight a case. And sometimes I've dealt with that, and you guys say, hey, you're in mediation, you're not in the courtroom anymore. Right. They don't know how to turn it off.
Right.
So they end up getting themselves in trouble sometimes, and that's when some mediators like me have to adjust them and say, hey, you're not in the courthouse, you're in mediation. And at the same time, you need to fight in the best interest of your attorney, of your client, because you have pushing to make your client, because I'm ready to call, if you're going to continue down this road, I'll just call this an impasse. And I've told them that before. I'll call this an impasse and we could just be done, because I'm not going to sit here and allow you to be so disrespectful to the other attorney who's actually here in good faith and actually want to resolve this client dispute. So you have to go to them, and you have to bring them back to reality that you need to be here in the best interest of your clients. And even if Florida Bar has I think the Florida Bar does have a code, or some different bars have a code of ethics in mediation, that you have to behave a certain way as a lawyer in mediation. And that might even fall under their professionalism clause.
Yeah, they're supposed to mediate in good faith. And to your question, Norine, as someone that has a law degree, now in Iowa, where I'm from, most of the mediators are either retired lawyers, retired judges, and things like that. But what Joseph is saying, I don't know if I should call him Joseph or George, but I just switch back and forth. Either one. Okay. What Joseph is saying is true, because I've had people ask me, well, why are you a mediator? Well, mediation requires so much skill, you have to know so much about so many different things. It requires you to be able to think on your feet. Trust me, I went to law school with people who have no people skills whatsoever. They don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to resolve any issues. They really are like someone I would go to write a paper. But in real life, like actually dealing with and resolving and getting people to a place where they need to be, law school doesn't teach you that. That's not taught to you in law school. And so a mediator, and mediators don't need to necessarily know the law, like they're not allowed to give you legal advice. So for me, it opens the door for me as a mediator. I actually get to service more clients as a mediator, right? Because obviously lawyers are licensed state by state by state, right?
Right.
So it's a lot harder to have a nationwide clientele, right? or international clientele like George has. George, you're my goals. Okay. I'm a fan. All right. Um, so it's more, to me, it's more freeing, it's less restrictive. And I have the utmost respect for mediators because you have to deal with everybody's emotions, expectations. You have to be intelligent, you have to be emotionally intelligent, intelligent about many different areas of the law, of business, of you basically have to study your clients' problems, issues, like he said, contracts. You know, we have to Google a lot. I have to there's so much information for you to actually prepare for a mediation that you have to digest and then yet still remain neutral and let them decide their outcomes. So I have the utmost respect for mediators, period. I know a lot of lawyers who are not very smart and they're not very good with people. And I know you do too.
Yes.
So my father had a GED, you guys. He has a he didn't even graduate from high school. And he was the best salesman that just ever, right? And he taught himself how to read blueprints, and he taught himself everything he needed to know for everything he faced in life. So sometimes we get caught up in, you know, titles and paperwork, but really, if you're willing to learn and be prepared, you can do anything. Whereas if you're just trained in one field, your mind is very narrow. And like he said, you're taught to fight and contend in law school, which for me kind of jarred a little bit against what I wanted as in regards to my personality. I would rather get people to work things out. Now, will I fight? Yeah, I will fight because you do have to be firm as a mediator. Don't get me wrong, but I would prefer to have us work things out in an intelligent manner. That's what I prefer. So that's my thought on. I don't give two craps about whether a mediator has an attorney or a law degree or not, because I know people from all walks of life, and none of that really matters. If you're good with people and people trust you and they have confidence in your skills, that's what matters at the end of the day. So kudos to you, George.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You're
that
welcome.
is a lot. And so with that
Yes.
said, it seems like the person that's mediating, they should have a particular type of skill set. So Joseph, in your opinion, what are the best qualities and skills that an effective mediator should possess?
Empathy and communication skills. Those are my top two, because you got to understand people when they have issues. There's a lot, sometimes resentment for the other side. Sometimes the issue could be so complex that the neither party understands. And if I always tell, my clients, I say, if both of you guys is arguing, there's nobody listening, because both people mouth is moving. So who is listening? If both mouths is moving, who's listening? Nobody. So sometimes one side have to step back and listen. So it's a lot of communication skills and empathy that goes into it. And then for me, my top number one is active listening as a mediator. We have to actively listen, because if you don't listen, then you're not going to hear the party. But at the same time, with your active listening comes interpretation. You have to interpret what the meaning is. So mediator, sometimes we listen, and then we have the interpretation of it. So we have to filter out what that means and then be sensitive to their issue and explain it back to them. So sometimes I would just do a repeat. I said, so sir, so what I'm hearing from you is that you don't want to give her this house, but I'm thinking you still love her. And that's what I'm hearing. And then sometimes they'll pause, because I do relationship mediation. And when I tell them, I always say, well, how about you go back to the beginning and tell me when you fell in love with her? And I do that to the men first, because women are more sensitized on hearing how a man fell in love with her. And once you deal with that, that brings her guard down of anger. It brings her to listen. Now, once he's done do that, he said, yeah, I met her so and so. She was the most beautiful woman in the room. And she just knocked me out. And I said, you know what? That woman's going to be my wife, or that woman's going to be my
Wow.
girlfriend. She's the one for me. So once he done tell me, yeah, and then I go and say, so what was the first date like? And then they'll go, oh my God, the first date, I was such a clumsy guy, so nervous. I tripped up. I spilled juice on her at dinner. The waitress, I knocked the food over, the waitress.
That's an awful date.
You know, but some women would find that corky, and you know, but she might be like, yeah, and because you're taking them back to the beginning where they fell in love.
And you're
And once
building
you take
rapport
them,
and bringing
yeah,
their guards down.
there you go. And that's what you have to do, because they come in the room 80 degrees hot, guns blazing, ready to rip each other apart. It's like WWE, everybody ready to go. So once they do that, and then I ask her, so how do you feel about what he says? Did you remember those days? And she said, some of them would say, well, not quite like how he said it. And then I would say, and then I would say, well, you tell me your version of it. Or was it you saw him first and you fell in love? And then, you know, I would throw something in there, because again, as some mediators, I always start to tell mediators when I'm explaining to them what I do. I say, go in there and be able to crack a joke. Don't go in there stiff like you've been starched up and ironed out. Go in there like human being to them, and don't treat them like a client. Treat them like this is you and your best friends sitting at the house, having a glass of wine and just, you know, just shooting the breeze. And just turn to her and say, I see you over there blushing when he mentioned how he met you, how cute you looked, and you had to be his wife. I saw you blushing. And then they'll start blushing, you know? And then, and then once
they don't teach you that in school, Norine. They don't teach you that in school.
No, yeah, that's some things that you have to definitely learn in the field, because he's right. Starting with the guy first really is the key, because we're like, what's he got to say? You know, and then when he says something, then you're like, oh, I didn't even know he felt that way. So now she's softened up, you know, and she's like, well, I was going to ask for everything, but now I may just ask for half.
or I may just ask him for another. I may just ask him for another night out on the night.
Right. Like maybe we need a redo, you know. I love how you frame that up, because it is super important, because like I said before, anytime you have any type of legal dispute, whether you in the courtroom or you in mediation, it is you have so much anxiety. You know, you have anxiety on, am I going to get my side? You know, am I going to win? Or am I going to be heard? You know, how is the other side going to act? Is he going to act a fool? You go in there with almost like a game plan. Like, okay, well, if he does this, then I'm going to do this. Or if she does this, then I'm going to do this. But if they go in cool, then I'm going to be cool. But I think you setting that initial tone, it's kind of like a chain reaction to how everything is going to go. And women love a good joke. We do love a good joke. And that will definitely diffuse the situation, which is your job, is to diffuse the situation.
Anxiety down.
Exactly. And blood pressure.
Yes, but before Ms. Hassane said her side, the biggest thing in mediation, doesn't matter what dispute or area you're practicing, the power of apology is greater than anything in mediation, or what the mediator or what your attorney have to say. With you, I've done mediation with a $10 million case, and the other side turned to that person and said, listen, you know what? I was wrong. I should have never pursued this the way I did. I realized it now that I've calmed down. I was wrong, and I want to take this opportunity and apologize. I said some things about your company I should not say. I posted some things about you that I should not have done. I really apologize, and I'm so heartfelt sorry. And I've seen the other side said, wow. And when they say wow, when they sit back and they was thinking, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is gonna go left. And the guy says, you know what, Mr. George, I would like to drop this case. Is that possible, or do I need to go to the court? I said, no, I'll just write it up that case is dismissed, and I'll send the paperwork off to the judge. And the power of apology is so potent that it could stop an angry person in their track if, but only if they're there in good faith.
Yeah.
Because believe me, we're in a world with people with, again, like Mr. Hassane say, people with mental issues, and you can have one or two a year in mediation. Everybody get one.
Yeah.
So again, the
Absolutely.
power of apology is strong in mediation.
You have to meet people
Yeah.
where they are.
And
Yes.
that is so true. And I'm glad he brought that up, because I've had that same experience where I knew, you know intuitively that if this person were to actually apologize, that's really what's needed here. And in apologies are so important, that we have in Islam, we have what's called, and I'm not bringing this a religion, but it is just buttressing the point that George was making, that and it's even in the Jewish religion, but it's called atonement. And I use those principles in my mediation. And the principles of atonement are, you point out the wrong. You know what? I was wrong. You're acknowledging the wrong. You're acknowledging it's pointed out. You acknowledge it. You're right. I did mess up. But you also, you go a little bit further, so you make sure that you redress it, and you make sure that it doesn't happen again. So I did exceed the limits. I did do this, and so we take a day out of every year, and we get with our families. We say, what have I done in this year that I have hurt you? I don't want you to carry that burden. I want to atone with you. And at the end of atonement, we should become back into oneness with one another. That's the goal. And it doesn't mean that, we're best friends or we were married, but if we have children, if we have business partners, if we have family, we have processed this apology to the point where we are back as though it did not happen. We've addressed it. It's been acknowledged. It's been rectified. And this person is assuring me it's not going to happen again. And so now I can let go of it, right? So it's a process that I've used in my mediations, because as a mediator, we're grabbing from everything. If I sometimes when I am dealing with a family and they're Christian, and they're like, sometimes you got to bring people what they believe in to the thing. Like there is no length that's ethical that I won't go to get you in the right headspace, because a person should be operating from their morals and ethics even when they're going through the most difficult time in their life. If you are a moral person, if you do have a set of principles, whether they be religious or just morals in general, if you've made that known to me, I'm going to bring that up. If you're straying from that, I'm going to gently, I'm not going to bring it out just like boom with a hammer. But, Norine, it's hard to explain all the mental processes that you're going through as a mediator, because you are actively listening, and you're seeing through the maze of emotions and statements that they're making. People will say craziness, and you're like, what is the root? What is really, like he said, he doesn't love me anymore. He cheated on me. That's what the root is. All this bickering about, the pets, and I want my mom's painting from 2015. It's I'm in pain, and I need that to be acknowledged. I need an apology. And like he said, in mediations, apologies can darn near cure all the deficiencies in the mediation. So I have asked my clients to apologize for what they've done. And I have had a few clients that would not apologize. And I told them, then you're not actually mediating in good faith, because you have to be willing to settle certain things. And sometimes settling it is saying, if I made you feel this way, if this has affected you negatively, I apologize. I sincerely apologize. But we are where we are right now. How can we, even though these tragic set of events have happened to get us here, we're apologizing. Now, what's the best way to move forward? I'm always pushing them. What's the best way to move forward that reflects who I am at my best? Because
Right.
divorce brings out the worst in people.
Oh, child,
Oh, yes, it does.
marriages, funerals, and divorce. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, funerals. Yeah, funerals is my top divorce because, man, there's some ugliness when somebody dies. It's really unfortunate.
Absolutely. I love how you guys really frame that up. So it sounds like you have to be the police, the therapist, the mom, the pastor. Like you wear multiple hats in mediation. You guys are making me want to go ahead and get into mediation. But, you know,
Come
I know
on, let's
Joseph
do
been
it. You
trying
got
to
a
get
brother
me
right
in
there.
for a minute.
Yeah. I know
We
a good
need more
school to
mediation.
get you into. You go to the Mediation Training Academy and you
Oh
ask
my
for Lloyd
God.
Commenter and he'll make sure he'll take good care of you.
When I retire from my 9 to 5, then I may consider it. But for right now, I'll take a hard pass. So before we close, share your thoughts on the future of conflict resolution and mediation. Where do you think it's headed?
You want me to go first?
Yes.
So it's headed to where it's gonna be the next thing next to, I think you're gonna start to see a lot more billboards with mediators on them now, next to personal injury, insurance claims and things like that. And just because of this podcast, I want to let everybody know, so conflict resolution is more than just mediation. You have negotiation, facilitation, and then you have arbitration. So it's growing. There's a lot of arbitration panels that you could resolve a dispute. And just for those who out there don't know what arbitration is where you have a third party who actually is like a judge who will actually make a decision on your case for you. It could be a non-binding or it could be a binding. And it's enforceable in court. And it's on a very slim chance court would overturn a binding arbitration. Very slim. And that's if the arbitrator was acting in the fate of another party or receiving some type of gift or money from another party to settle the case. That's the only time a judge would overturn it. But other than that, arbitration is completely binding. If you choose to go that binding route. If it's non-binding, you could take it to court and have it enforceable in court with the arbitration award. But I see it to be the future. I just got accepted to the Abu Dhabi Arbitration and Mediation Center in Abu Dhabi. So overseas is starting to recognize it. So, when you have those places like Dubai and the different parts of the United Arab Emirates and Egypt and all of those, even in France have their own mediation panels. Japan has their own mediation panels. So it's growing where they're resolving disputes. So it's global. So it's not just in the US. It's Pakistan, it's in India, it's in Croatia, it's all over. All these wars that you see right now, there's a mediator that's involved.
Well,
Same
they're
as
not a very good one.
well,
No,
you
they're not
again,
good
you have to have the parties who want to resolve the dispute.
Right.
And sometimes
Right.
even the mediator does their job. When the mediator leaves, conflict starts up again. So just like the movie stars right now, more than likely there's a mediator involved in that between the movie stars and the TV networks. Same as the unions for the cars and the car manufacturers, there's a mediator in the middle of that. Same as, again, a lot of the celebrities right now is using mediators and arbitrators because they don't want their business in the courthouse being public knowledge. So they are utilizing that. Same as the athletes, a lot of football players, hockey players, all these people out there is using the mediation and arbitration platform to resolve their disputes. Even the healthcare. The healthcare, you don't see a lot of the hospitals in the courthouses because the healthcare is using arbitration panels to resolve their dispute because it's a quicker process and they get back to running their companies.
Mm.
So for the future, it's gonna be definitely on Zoom. Everything it seems like it's on Zoom. Before you used to have to fly out, meet in an office. Now you just get online and you resolve disputes. I've resolved a dispute over in Dubai, sitting at my house over the internet. Who would have thought that 20 years ago? Nobody would have thought that 20 years ago we would do that.
Yeah.
So it's the future. It's saving people money. Not only that, the judges, lawyers, and the court system itself can focus on the real issues and get a lot of cases resolved within the courthouse a whole lot quicker. And even governments right now. In Florida, the HOA associations, which is governed by the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, says before any housing HOA association, a condo association, or mobile home association, any of those, before they could go to even to the courthouse with any case, has to go through mediation first. Before they could even file a case with the court, they have to go to mediation first. So a lot of the governing bodies is saying, go to mediation. If you cannot resolve it in mediation, okay, now you could go to court. But they don't want to tie up the court, because if you have all these different areas of the economy going to the courthouse, you could flood the courthouse with so many cases, and then there'll be backlog for years and years and years, and major cases that need to be heard right now will not be heard. So
Right.
mediation is another tool that the Supreme Court justices have found to be a tool that they could use to clear out backlog cases.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of like on the front line then.
You could say we are like the fire trucks of the courthouse.
Fire trucks.
Yes, yes. I like to call us like the client whisperers, because I don't know if
Yes.
George has experienced this, but I've had attorneys call me like, I got this settlement. I have this tough client. Like, it's actually fair, because whenever there's a personal injury, everybody thinks they should get like $10 million because they bumped their elbow. Like, I mean,
Right.
it's always, and so sometimes they need a third party to just kind of, let's go over this, what are your thoughts, and to get certain things, like you said, to move along. Like, sometimes it's held up for no other reason than a person has a misunderstanding, and so mediators, we're the future. It's the future of the law, in my humble opinion. It's just expanding at the most rapid rate. Like, mediated divorce wasn't even a thing like 20 years, like no one even knew what that was. Now people are actively saying, I want a mediated divorce. So even the language is changing. So the next thing I feel like mediators are just gonna, like you said, it's global. It's really the way that I feel like humanity is supposed to resolve issues. I feel like it's more intuitive to who we are as human beings. So
I love it.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're right. It is going in the right direction. I actually didn't realize that mediation was so big. I wish I had one when I was having my divorce. That was already traumatic enough. But yeah, it sounds like it's the wave of the future, and it's catching on, and more people are actually utilizing those services. I have had such a good time really
Before you
having this
go-
discussion. I feel like I've learned so much, and anytime, Joseph makes a video, he would send it to me and I would listen. So I have some idea of what mediation is, but just hearing it on this broad space,
And let me jump in real quick.
Mhm.
Just because it's the future, I want to let you know, and your audience out there also, that a lot of companies now is putting in an arbitration and mediation clause into the application. So that's the future, that a lot of the companies, they don't want to go to court or deal with the EEOC. So they put in these arbitration clause. The arbitration clause is actually giving up your rights. So once you sign that thing, you're actually giving up your rights to go to court, unless it's a federal law that's being break, then you can still take them to court. But if it's a mediation clause, the company is actually wanting to resolve that internally first, so you don't file an EEOC case first. But that's the future right there, is everybody's putting it into the contract right now, because no company wants to go to court. It's take time away from other employees actually leaving the job site and going to the courthouse, and it disrupts the company's function. So I just want to interject that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the lawyers are eventually going to come at us hard, because you got to realize, even with what you're saying, George, that's still digging into the big law. That's still digging into their pockets. So, there's different states have different rules and regulations and things like that. So we definitely need to start coming together as mediators and making sure that our interests are protected, because even though we work alongside attorneys and judges and things like that, there's still, because mediation is growing and people are turning more towards that. And like you said, once it's in those contracts and things like that, it's taking money from somebody else. And, so we should be definitely making sure we're watching all of the legislation, all of the proposed bills that have anything to do with mediation and any type of restrictions on that, because a lot of times that's where they make mischief with the law, especially when something is growing and booming. If you hear the story even about Uber, how many attacks they had, from the law, because they were putting taxis out of business. So anytime you're like that emerging market, you really have to also kind of be prepared for, a fight a little bit, so that's what I see coming as well. On top of all that growth, there's going to be some difficulty attached to that.
So you think lawyers are going to be obsolete?
No, never.
Not obsolete.
Never.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And I don't see too much of infighting between mediators and the attorneys, because again, as Ms. Hassane said in the beginning, a lot of mediators is retired judges and retired attorneys, and then what they call us non-attorneys is really subject matter experts. So they really can't come after a subject matter expert, because we're an expert in a field. So you could probably have a guy, let's say you have a guy who's working on construction. He's probably an engineer in that whole entire field, so he would know more than an attorney. The attorney might know the legal terminology, but that guy could know what a rebar is. He could know the type of concrete. He will know how many pounds that concrete could take, pressure on it. So attorneys is never going to be obsolete, but we're going to play side by side. I don't think we can take too many shares or too many clients away from them, because it's governed by the Florida Supreme Court and the different courts house. It's really governed by the justices, the Supreme Court itself, that regulates all the courthouses, and doesn't matter what state it is. So it comes down from there first, and then it gets dispersed out to the different states, who attach their own different laws and their own training procedures that they expect in their own courthouses. So the attorneys know to play nice on both sides. It's just the same as a paralegal working for an attorney. We're just an extension of them, because they use us, we use them. Because I've gotten cases that come to me and I've said, I think you need an attorney. And,
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So it goes hand in hand. You have some attorneys who will say, listen, have you tried mediation first? And then if they said no, then they'll submit to the other side. We would like to try mediation first before we proceed to trial. So I've seen all those scenarios play out. So
Wow.
I think the disputes between mediation and attorneys, I think it's not going to be that big, because again, it's a balanced playing field. We both need each other.
Yeah, I agree. And it's
We may
better
be the
to work on the
stepchild,
same
but we
team.
still play with each other.
Yeah, it's better to work on the same team. I think, I think everybody is needed. I just wanted to put that question out there just to see how you guys felt about it, just to test your temperature just a little bit.
Well, the legal field is a mature. It's one of the most mannered professions. So it doesn't matter whether you're a paralegal, whether you're a judge, attorney, law clerk, JA. We are well mannered and we respect each other. That's one thing about the legal industry, that they emphasize a code of ethics, and it's very strict on that. You will get suspended. Like in Florida, the dispute resolution department that governs the mediators, You do certain things. I've seen them make guys white. What do you call those? To explain their cases and stuff like that. I can't remember what they call it. Now to write out a paragraph, like in school.
Affidavit?
No,
I'm sorry.
you know,
An
when you're in
essay?
school, yes, an essay. They've
Oh, an
made them
essay?
write a whole essay, and then they suspend their license for 6 months.
Oh,
And
wow.
what they do is they post them online on under their mediator's history. They post them on there, so you could pull up any mediator and you can see the disciplinary action.
Wow.
Wow.
So that's why we are
Putting
very
folks on blast.
well, the same as the Florida bar. If you have code of ethics in place, it keeps people honest and it keeps people doing what they need to do.
Yeah.
That way nobody decides to be disrespectful to, nobody. So the legal industry has a lot of guardrails in place to keep, checks and balance.
I hear you. Wow. Well, man, this was an amazing discussion. I'm glad that I actually was a part of it. So we can wrap this up because I know you guys have so much to do. I mean, don't let me keep you from your cases. Dr. Hassane, where can folks find you on the social media?
They can find me at elitelegalservices.com. I do have an Elite Legal Services Facebook page, but guys, I haven't posted on it. I need a social media manager badly. So that's pretty much my handles. I'm still working on, getting a business social media profile, but my profile is Hassane Muhammad on Facebook and Twitter, but I don't put a lot of stuff about mediation on there, but I'm gonna start. But I do have an Elite Legal Services. If you start at my website, that's a good place to start. I will be updating it, I promise. So
Great. And Joseph, where can folks find you?
Well, they could type in my name on the internet, Joseph George Mediator, Florida, and I probably get popped up in articles, podcasts, TV shows,
Show off.
speaking engagements, or they could go to our website at www.georgeandgeorgeadr.com. Okay. And they could find out our different services that we offer there, which, the areas of our practice is, construction, employment, dispute, landlord and tenant, cannabis, etc.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for saying yes to this on a little bit of a short notice. Sometimes life just be lifing, and you said, I have this idea, I want to do this thing, and then you're like, oh my God, I hope they say yes, because this may not be a big, it may not be convenient. So I'm so happy that you guys agreed to come on. I am so apologetic of all of the technical difficulties. I thank the folks that are actually watching on YouTube that I can see are watching. I thank all the folks that are going to be watching the replay. I apologize for technical difficulties. The technical gods were not with us today. But the plethora of information that you will receive from this Save Our Sisters Unplugged podcast is surmountable. You will not be disappointed. And I thank you guys again for being here, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so
Peace
much.
and blessings.
Pleasure being here.
Thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're
having me.
welcome.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, peace and blessings.